Exam? Huh?
Sir?
Whether I should come or not. I will also have online exam.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. From Hyderabad, I'll conduct. But faculty should be there now. See, I came for some purpose to Hyderabad and I'm stuck up here.
No, sir. Today, actually, now they are leaving, sir. They are just allowing like anything.
Huh?
Today, sir came from Hyderabad to Visakhapatnam. No, they took swab and sent it, sir. That's all.
Huh?
They took swab and sent her with him, sir.
That's all. No quarantine, nothing.
No, sir. No quarantine. Even if it is positive, also no quarantine, sir. No.
Huh?
Even if it is positive, also
Home quarantine.
home quarantine, sir. Unless you are symptomatic, they will not ask you to get admitted.
So now free travel can be done.
Maybe, sir.
Huh?
Maybe, sir. Yes, sir. Free travel only.
Flights.
Yes, sir. Flights also free travel.
Then I can come, I think, few days before the practical exam, I think.
Yes, sir. But no purpose coming, sir, unless you are very much confident because.
No, yaar, exam.
Okay. For exam, you should come, sir.
I have to be there now.
Actually, my duty, I went, no, sir, some 3 days back.
Uh,
I was really scared, sir.
why?
Yes, sir. It's not like normal year, sir. It's really scary to stay in that year. And because patients are worried, patients are frightened, nursing staff is frightened, and the doctor also is frightened, sir.
All are frightened.
All are frightened, sir. No one wants to do anything there. And I have seen them, sir. They are just. And I have seen patients very in a horrible, pathetic situation, sir. They are literally begging for oxygen.
2-3 walking friends had the positive, and
Okay, sir.
fellow, I stopped walking since 3 weeks and they are together. So he said he had some mild fever and classically taste and smell were gone.
Okay, sir.
He did not test it, but he is staying at home.
Okay,
Now
sir.
he is regaining the taste and nothing, and no other cough or breathlessness.
Actually, it's sad to say that our Pranay sir's son also got infected, sir. So he went home. He is recovering now, sir.
Yesterday I talked to him. Okay.
Sorry, sir, I got disconnected.
Okay.
Okay, sir, we will start, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Today I'll be dealing with S3 and S4. Introduction. According to Rushmer, cardiac sounds represent vibrations. Shall I continue, sir? According to Rushmer, cardiac sounds represents vibrations of cardiac structures and blood within the heart, and these sounds are primarily produced by acceleration or deceleration of the blood mass during the cardiac cycle, and it is primarily affected by the abrupt changes in the pressure and flow within the heart. And observant and thoughtful clinicians have debated the origin of various cardiac sounds over the years, and controversy still abounds concerning this fascinating subject even till date, despite of availability of various echocardiographic parameters and phonocardiograph parameters. Changes Changes in the momentum of velocity within the fluid-filled elastic system will lead to reverberations of the ventricular mass, fibrous skeleton, valve leaflets and their supportive structures, and the blood itself. And these produce audible sounds in low to high frequency range. All cardiac sounds then result from abrupt accelerating or decelerating forces that stretch the surrounding cardiac structure. The more rapid these forces, the louder the frequency. And low frequency sounds typically reflects large amount of blood moving at a lower pressure. And S3 introduction, low frequency, it is a low frequency mid-diastolic sound during the rapid ventricular filling phase. And when heard in the disease state, it is called as the S3 gallop or protodiastolic gallop or the ventricular diastolic gallop. And there is one more gallop called as atrial gallop, which is nothing but S4, S1, S2. And this S3 gallop is nothing but S1, S2, S3, which is also called as protodiastolic gallop or the ventricular diastolic gallop. The term gallop does not necessarily imply a rapid heart rate unless we think, and it usually used to signify an abnormal S3 or S4 heart sound at normal or even slow heart rates.
Previously, the concept was gallop means the third heart sound with a tachycardia, and it's a pathological like that. But now they say that it's not necessary. Heart rate is not the concern.
Mechanisms of third heart sound are supposed to be either valvular, a combination of valvular, ventricular, left ventricular chest wall retraction, sudden limitation in the long axis filling, and the movement of the ventricle. Various theories have been put forward to explain the theory for production of the S3, and the prime three areas were the valvular theory, ventricular theory, and the impact theory. The prerequisite for S3 is a non-obstructed AV valve, and the valvular theory is nothing but diastolic tensing of the AV valves at the termination of rapid ventricular filling results in S3. But it's disapproved by the phonocardiographic studies. And the next three theories, that is the ventricular theory and the impact theory, were supposed to explain the complete mechanism of the occurrence of S3. The ventricular theory is nothing but sudden deceleration of the onrushing column of blood in the ventricular inflow during rapid ventricular filling phase sets the entire cardiovascular structures into vibration. And this leads to the production of S3. Whereas the impact theory says that the ventricular mechanism explains the recording of S3 within the ventricular cavity and also the epicardial surface. The external S3 recording is not due to the passive transmission of the sound from the LV to the chest wall, but it is actually due to a dynamic impact of the heart with the chest wall. So the force of impact and the resultant intensity of the sound depends on the size of the heart, the motion of the heart within the thorax, the chest wall configuration, particularly in patients with COPD, obesity, thick chest wall which dampens, and the phases of respiration and the position of the patient, whether he is in left lateral position, such as in LVS3, or in the supine position in RVS3. The ventricular theory and the impact theory together explains the mechanism of occurrence of S3. And S3 usually follows a mitral valve opening at the onset of rapid ventricular filling and occurs near the end of the rapid filling wave. The initial vibrations of S3 generally coincides with the maximal exertion or checking of the LV septum and the posterior free wall. The timing suggests that the S3 is related to the forces active during early diastolic filling. These are the various, these are the simple cycle, the diagram showing entire cardiac cycle. We see that the S3 occurs during the rapid filling of the ventricular diastole. These are the various phases of cardiac cycle. We get S3 in the rapid filling phase around 0.2 seconds prior to the occurrence of S1. So there is a wide gap between S3 and S1, whereas the S4 is usually seen just around 0.1 to 0.2 seconds just before S2, S1. So it is a most often a presystolic sound is S4 rather than S3. Then we need to know the phases of cardiac cycle. There are two things. One is physiological systole and the cardiological systole. Cardiological systole is demarcated by the heart sounds rather than the physiological events. And physiological systole usually includes two phases, that is isovolumetric contraction and maximum ejection. Whereas physiological diastole includes reduced ejection, isovolumetric relaxation, and filling phases. And cardiologic systole is a term that is given for the period from the M1 to the A2, that is closure of M1 to the complete closure of A2. It includes a major part of isovolumetric contraction. It includes not only maximum ejection but also the reduced ejection phase. And the cardiologic diastole includes from the time of aortic wall closure to the complete closure of M1, mitral wall. The mechanism of production of S3. S3 occurs as an active ventricular relaxation ends and passive distension begins. Left ventricular relaxation often is abnormal in ischemic heart disease and conditions affecting the myocardium. And in cases of where there is abnormality in the LV relaxation, there will be effect on the velocity of diastolic filling and ventricular compliance, and each leads to the occurrence, timing, and intensity of S3. The intensity of S3 is increased when early diastolic filling is rapid due to elevated left atrial pressure or bed volume, or when left ventricular distensibility in early diastole is increased. And the S3 correlates with the increased amplitude, with an increased amplitude and velocity of the rapid filling wave. The S3 usually coincides with the proximal part of the Y descent in JVP. Then the characteristics of S3, it can be either physiological or pathological. Usually, when it is physiological, it is usually a mid-diastolic, and it's around 120 to 200 milliseconds after A2, and it is normal in children and young adults, rare after 40 years in males and 50 years in females, and it coincides with the rapid filling wave of apex cardiogram and wide descent of atrial pressure tracing.
This apex cardiogram was there nearly 30-40 years back when I was in AIMS. We used to do that. That is, you put a probe or the apex and record the movement of the cardiac, the apex. So for that you will have a pre-systolic wave, systolic wave, then the diastolic rapid and slow filling wave. So with that you used to diagnose hypertrophic cardiomyopathy where A wave is very prominent, the Y descent is prominent in this one, constriction like that. So that was very commonly done at that time. A lot of articles also came, and it was in the textbooks, routinely it was written. Now nobody does, or very rarely, unless you are doing some research work, apex cardiogram is not. Actually, in our echocardiogram, you can record that with a probe, same. Phono, apex, all those things can be recorded with this same probe like that. But now we don't. No, you should have a separate probe for that, not your ultrasound probe. But so that was very useful, mainly to diagnose hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and constrictive pericarditis, those situations.
It is usually, and it's
So
best.
just to, you should have a little basic concept of echocardiogram like A wave, H wave, and rapid filling wave, RPF, and slow filling, those things. Minimum some concept, because somebody asks you when you're discussing about the apex, they may ask what is apex cardiogram, have any time heard or read or seen like that. Then you can say, yes, sir, I don't know that previously it was done, now nobody is practicing it. Okay.
Best heard, as it is a low frequency sound, it is best heard with the bell of the stethoscope in left lateral position. And it is usually not palpable and may disappear on sitting or standing posture. And causes of third heart sound, it can be physiological, pathological, and S3-like sounds. Physiological are primarily physiological S3 is seen in children, young adults, and pregnancy. And pathological, it can be seen in ventricular failures, either might be secondary to a right ventricular failure or left ventricular failure. In non-heart failure conditions causing hyperkinetic circulatory states like anemia, thyrotoxicosis, beriberi, and volume overload. And third one is AV wall regurgitations with MR or TR, semilunar wall regurgitations with AR or PR, systemic AV fistulas with high output states, and in conditions with left to right shunts such as in ASD, VSD, PDA. And some sounds like pericardial knock and tumor plop are more like an S3 mimickers, which should be differentiated from S3. Physiological and the causes of S3, children and young adults, and it can be seen in high output states with high amount of diastolic overload, such as in patients having exercise, anxiety, pregnancy. And the physiologic explanation for presence of S3 in normal children and young adults is not well explained, as it is explained in older subjects. In older subjects, usually it is due to a prominent rapid due to altered sound transmission characteristic in adults, a decrease in the left chest wall coupling in older individuals, physiologic changes in the LV components that occur with aging. Pathologic S3 can occur with excessive rapid ventricular filling, such as in hyperkinetic states, AV valve incompetence, left to right shunts, or cyanotic congenital heart disease with pulmonary blood flow, increased pulmonary blood flow, such as in VSD, TGR, TLPVC. And next one is causes of S3 are also due to increase in end systolic or end diastolic volume and high filling pressure secondary to ventricular dysfunction, which is seen in conditions such as ischemic heart disease, dilated cardiomyopathy, systemic hypertension, pulmonary arterial hypertension, valvular heart disease, and congenital heart diseases. And correlates of third heart sound is very important. Usually, a third heart sound correlates anatomically with a dilated ventricle and functionally with systolic function with ejection fraction less than 40%. And the presence of third heart sound depicts a hemodynamic parameter of end diastolic pressure greater than 25 mmHg with a low cardiac index less than 2 liter per minute per meter square, and usually will be associated with symptoms like dyspnea, PND, orthopnea. And when we keep a Doppler flow across the AV wall, we have a tall E wave compared to A wave, suggesting a diastolic impairment of filling patterns. And next one is very important, is physiological versus pathological S3. And first thing, always a pathological wave occurs more far from the A2, around 142 to 160 milliseconds after the A2 when compared to a physiologic S3, which occurs around 120 to 200 milliseconds after the A2. Usually not palpable. A physiologic S3 is usually not palpable, unlike a pathologic S3, which may be palpable and felt as a definite cut. And physiologic S3 may disappear on sitting or standing posture, whereas the pathologic S3 does not disappear with standing through, although though it might attenuate, and it occurs normally in children and young adults and rare after 40 years in males and 50 years in females, whereas it can occur in any age group with the underlying pathology for a pathologic S3. Usually there will be no symptoms in case if there is physiologic S3, and it may be associated symptoms and cardiac enlargement in case if there is pathologic S3. And the correlates S3 in mitral regurgitation.
Ashok.
Sir.
So S3 is a low frequency sound. Normally it is a 40 to 60 Hz like that. So S3 and S4 are better felt, palpable than audible like that. So especially S4 and acute MI, you can feel it. Same thing in a heart failure, S3 like that. So that is one of the important things is asked is S3 and S4 are better palpable than audible. That point because of the low frequency sounds.
S3 in mitral regurgitation, it is seen in hemodynamically significant mitral regurgitation. Loudest S3 among all the conditions so far that have been documented, it will 150 hertz and may stimulate an open snap and may be associated with mid-diastolic flow rumble, and it is hemodynamically, it is due to significantly elevated LV filling pressure with high diastolic filling rates. If LV ejection fraction is normal in MR, it indicates a volume overload state, and in such cases, the velocity and amplitude of the early diastolic filling is increased and the apical impulse is hyperactive. Development of significant pulmonary arterial hypertension after severe MR may soften S3, but if it continues and if the condition leads to RV failure, S3 may appear again. So this slide is particularly important to know that the loudest S3 so far is seen in mitral regurgitation, which a high frequency of greater than 158, and it may even stimulate a high frequency sound like opening snap, which is also a diastolic sound, and it may be associated with diastolic flow rumble as seen in mitral stenosis. It is hemodynamically, it is due to significantly elevated LV pressure with high diastolic flow rates. S3 in LV dysfunction, and S3 is characteristic of global LV impairment, and in middle-aged and older LLs without mitral regurgitation, if S3 suggests a significant decrease in the myocardial contractility and depressed ejection fraction. If S3 is related to a new clinical event such as accelerated hypertension or acute MI, it may be transient and will disappear when LV function improves. In LV left ventricular decompensation associated with secondary or functional MR, S3 may be related more to the poor ventricular function than to the LV volume overload. With appropriate medical treatment, the regurgitant murmur and the S3 related to the LV dysfunction will become softer or disappear. And this response to the treatment varies on the underlying cardiac function. In patients with severely regurgitant wall with preserved LV function, however, the murmur and S3 becomes louder as the cardiac compensation improves with therapy, whereas it becomes softer in patients with LV dysfunction patients. A pathologic S3 caused by LV decompensation will persist when the patient assumes an upright position, although it may be softened with the maneuver. The S3 may be very loud and is often associated with other signs of LV decompensation, such as pulsus alternans, a sustained LV apical impulse, narrow pulse pressure, or signs of overt congestive heart failure. In general, a persistent and loud S3 heralds a poor prognosis. An S3 in the presence of coronary artery disease suggests a major LV assynergy or an LV aneurysm. A sustained LV lift or ectopic impulse is a common associated finding, and it is common in decompensated hypertensive and aortic disease. And regarding the hemodynamics and the cardiac index and ejection fraction are substantially decreased, and left atrial, pulmonary arterial diastolic, and pulmonary capillary wedge pressures are elevated, and left ventricular and early diastolic pressure is elevated. The late or end diastolic ventricular pressure may or may not increase further with atrial contraction. Actually, this is nothing but to show there is a lot of confusion to decide whether it is S4, S1 or S1 ejection click, and also we need to differentiate between S2 OS or S2 S3. So when we
actually this you have to add it up, Ashok. Actually, many times the discussion shows that you draw a diagram of what are all the diastolic events. You put that, so one is opening snap, other is tumor flap, other is third heart sound, and the other last one is the end systole. End diastole is the S4, and
yes,
so these things some little tricky Everyone knows that which comes first, which is high frequency, which is low. See, like pericardial knock is a high frequency sound, whereas S3, S4 are low frequency sounds. So like that is one. And opening snap is normally heard over a wider area, where S3 is limited to that area from whether it's an RV or LV like that. And tumor plop and this thing is difficult to make out. Again, pericardial knock is a high frequency sound. It may be heard over a wider area like that. So like that, everyone should be, you have to add the pericardial knock and tumor plop also for this. So that will be second sound split also. See, second sound split A2, P2. Then all the diastolic events like opening snap, third heart sound, tumor plop, then S4, all those things you should be know. And you have to know about what frequencies they are, whether low frequency or high frequency, where are the better heard, and how to differentiate like that. But most important is all of them, we go by clinical situation rather than if all of us are asked to blindly auscultate and say, it may be very difficult. No doubt in the phono it says high frequency, this low frequency. Our ears cannot make out that subtle difference like that. So clinical situation, whether it's a heart failure or you're suspecting a constrictive pericarditis or it is a mitral stenosis, in that way you can differentiate. And so most of the time, the clinical background is more important before you straight away commit. No, sir, it's high frequency, that's why I feel only it is pericardial knock. I should not talk like. See, it goes by your entire clinical situation and what is your diagnosis. Whether this finding is fitting you to that or not. So that should be the approach. Okay, anyhow, you put it here, same. You have to add a pericardial knock also to that and tumor plop.
Yes. How to differentiate between a split S2, opening snap, and S3? Split ST, S2, and opening snap are usually high frequency sounds, whereas S3 is usually a low frequency sound. It is best heard, split S2 is best heard at the base, whereas the opening snap and S3 are best heard at the apex. And S3 is best heard with the bell, whereas split S2 and the opening snaps are best heard with the diaphragm. And the relation to the posture may decrease or S3 may decrease or disappear on sitting, whereas split S2 A2P2 interval narrows on standing, whereas A2OS interval widens on standing. And relationship with aspiration, A2P2 widens with inspiration and A2OS stays constant with respiration. And definitely intervals, A2P2, by seeing the diagram, we can tell that A2P2 will be always lesser than A2OS, lesser than A2S3. Physiology of
I think you have to add it up, Raju.
Yes, sir.
So you have only written opening snap and S3 like that. So pericardial knock and tumor plop also should be added. So everyone sometimes, if you're not fumbling like that, we may ask you to draw. Then it becomes more difficult. If you're asking something, you say, no, sir, it's 5 frequency. No, sir. But when you ask to draw, it will be more tough. It should be very exactly know where is it, what are situated.
Sir, next class we'll have a lecture on adventitious sounds, clicks, and the tumor plop, everything, sir. Rest everything.
No, here S3 we're prescribing same thing all the time. Okay.
Okay. Next one, physiology of S4.
Then are you talking again how to differentiate LV, RV like that?
Yes, sir. I'm talking, sir.
Okay.
Physiology of S4. S4 is a low frequency sound following a left atrial systole. It is an atrial contraction that results in an abrupt increase in the LV diastolic diameter length. And although S4 is also known as atrial sound, but is actually not. S4 is a ventricular in origin. It follows the P wave approximately.
Atrial sound means due to atrial kick, not atrial producing.
Yes,
see, because of the atrial contraction, the flow is increasing at the end diastole, which is causing the turbulence and having a S4 like that. So the nomenclature came like that, not that it is produced in atria.
It follows P wave approximately 70 milliseconds and precedes the S1. The actual contraction of the atria produces no audible sound. Rather, audible vibrations of the S4 result from a sudden tensing of the LV mass, the mitral valve apparatus, and the blood within the ventricle. The coupling of the LV with the chest wall is an important but poorly understood factor in S4 audibility. The hemodynamic correlates of the abnormal S4 include an LV chamber that often is hypertrophied but with little or no increase in LV diameter, normal LV pressure in early diastole with an elevation of end diastolic pressure, a low compliance ventricular pressure loop, impaired velocity of early LV diastolic filling, a well-preserved cardiac output. The LV cavity wall thickness ratio is usually low and the LV chamber is stiff and non-compliant. In normal S4 or physiological S4, it usually occurs in increased conditions with increased blood flow, as in young subjects or patients with thyrotoxicosis, or in presumed physiological loss of left ventricular compliance with aging. Some studies have documented a recordable S4 in supine or left lateral positions in 35 to 70% of normal middle-aged adults. In the normal heart, the LV passively receives around 70 to 80% of its diastolic filling volume from the left atrium during the early to mid diastole, with a smaller contribution from the atrial contraction in the late diastole. In myocardial diseases such as hypertrophy, left atrium contractions becomes responsible for greater proportion of LV filling, and this is called as LA booster pump function. It takes on increasing importance as LV distensibility decreases, and left atrial contraction may provide around up to 30 to 40% of the LV diastolic filling in these circumstances, and under these conditions, S4 or atrial gallop may be quite prominent. As LV dysfunction progresses, early and mid diastolic pressures rises. In general, LV contraction produces a relatively small further increase in pressure once the LV cavity is enlarged, particularly in LV failure. At this stage, in the progressed LV dysfunction with progressively dilated LV, we have a soft S4 and it will be inaudible, although LA pressure is high. And this sequence also is reflected in the LV apex impulse. Importance of left atrial function is very much important for S4. Vigorous left atrial contraction is necessary to provide sufficient blood flow to abruptly descend the LV in late diastole and produce an audible S4. When atrial contraction forces are reduced by fibrosis, ischemia, dilatation, the S4 may be soft or absent. And in chronic severe MR pressure, although LA is very large and distensible, S4 is rare in spite of elevated LA pressure, as contractile force is diminished because of chronic disturbance in the left atrial wall. When the onset of MR is acute or recent, S4 is common, and the normal size atrium contracts vigorously in an acute MR with a markedly increased hyperdynamic LA systole. In complete heart block, random atrial sounds can be heard, and these may be quite prominent whenever the atrium contracts against a closed AV valve. And in this condition, the atrial sounds are not generated from the LV walls, but probably reflects the tensing of the atrium and the mitral valve apparatus. The clinical significance: a prominent S4 is commonly found in coronary artery disease, hypertension, aortic stenosis, and hypotension.
Coronary artery disease mainly in acute MI. If auscultate very closely in the first 2-3 days, nearly 70 to 80% will have a fourth heart sound. So that's why in acute MI, if you auscultate closely, you will easily make out fourth heart sound. So fourth heart sound looks as though the first sound is little split-like thing. And so that is in a coronary disease, you have to specify. No, in angina, I think also at that transient there, but usually in acute MI, first few days you will have the fourth heart sound. So if you want to demonstrate S4, you have to show in an acute MI patient to the other students, MD, MBBS, or beginners of cardiology.
The intensity of S4 varies considerably when prominent. S4 may be loudest heart sound heard at the apex. The common denominator in individuals with prominent S4 is LVH with increased left ventricular end diastolic pressure and restricted LV diastolic filling produced by a stiff left LV. S4 is far more sensitive indicator of decreased LV compliance than S3. And S4 implies a less serious alteration in the left ventricular function and carries a more benign prognosis when compared to S3. And S3 often signifies cardiac decompensation, incipient or overt congestive heart failure with a poor prognosis.
S4 is more in a diastolic dysfunction, whereas S3 is more in a systolic dysfunction, broadly.
Yes, sir. Causes of S4, it can be physiologic or pathologic. Physiological, when it is a physiological S4 may be seen in normal children, young adults and elder people aged more than 60 years with excessive late diastolic filling, and it can be seen in hyperkinetic states like anemia, thyrotoxicosis, AV fistula, and acute valvular regurgitation. And the dictum is to be remembered that S4 is more seen in acute MR and S3 is seen more in chronic MR. Coronary artery disease. S4 is the hallmark of ischemic heart disease. The reduced LV compliance resulting from the prior MI frequently results in an audible S4, and an audible S4 has been demonstrated in around 80 to 90% patients during acute myocardial infarction after 1 to 2 days. It has been suggested that S4 that persists into the post-infarction period may indicate that the patient is at higher risk for subsequent cardiac events. In patients with LV synergy or an overt LV aneurysm, S4 is common and is typically palpable. In hypertension, an isolated S4 is common in chronic hypertension, suggesting LV hypertrophy and reduced compliance. And S4 does not indicate in this condition go in favor of a serious LV dysfunction. And in aortic stenosis, an audible S4 is seen in patients with valvular AS and may be a valuable sign indicating a significant LVOT obstruction, and which usually is associated with a concentric left ventricular hypertrophy and a stiff ventricle. The finding of an S4 in patients over 50 years is less specific in predicting severe AS, as the most common causes of S4 in a patient over 50 years is coronary artery disease or hypertension. A palpable or extremely loud atrial sound in AS usually indicates severe aortic valve obstruction in any age group. Audible and palpable atrial sounds are almost always present in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and it is characteristic of both obstructive and non-obstructive varieties of HOCM. In cardiomyopathy, an S4 is common and usually palpable in subjects with significant myocardial disease, and S3 is typically present in late stages, and S3 is more likely to be present than S4 in late stages. An acute myocardial regurgitation S4 is characteristic of patients with LV overload, resulting in forceful and atrial contraction that expels the blood into the normal sized LV and in a resultant atrial sound. In chronic MR, S4 usually will be absent and it will be replaced by an S3. Thus, the presence of S4 in a patient with MR strongly suggests that the mitral lesion is of a relatively recent onset. And in arrhythmias, in atrial fibrillation, S4 is absent, but on reversion to sinus rhythm, a dilated atrium may have a decreased force of contraction that cannot produce an S4, and sinus tachycardia may accentuate or bring out an S4 back when it is in sinus rhythm. But if PR is short, the atrial sound may not be distinguishable from a loud S1. And in second and third degree AV block, S4 can be heard variably throughout the diastole. And in case of a right ventricular S4, usually seen in pulmonary arterial hypertension and pulmonary stenosis, the presence of S4 in a patient with suspected pulmonary embolism suggests that there is a significant right ventricular pressure overload. Factors relating to S4 audibility is tricky actually. In cases of acute or chronic left ventricular decompensation, the S4 closely follows the P wave of the EKG and more widely separated from the S1 at any given PR interval. Thus, in cases of acute left ventricular decompensation, it is more readily heard. As LV pressure and volume decreases during therapy for heart failure or hypertension, the P wave S4 interval lengthens and the S4 occurs later and moves closer to S1 and decreases in its audibility. and S4 may seem to be disappear following the acute phase of MI or after treatment of significant hypertension. But in fact, the sound is being more difficult to appreciate as it moves closer to the S1. With longer PR, an S4 is more readily heard and S1 is soft. This may mimic a split S1 if both sounds are of equal intensity. Next one is summation gallop or quadruple rhythm. Whenever the PR interval is long or the heart rate is rapid, atrial contraction will move into the rapid filling phase of the diastole. It comes earlier. Since the diastole shortens more than the systole, when the heart rate increases, passive ventricular filling is superimposed on the augmented flow across the mitral wall due to LA systole. This combination may cause a very loud summation gallop, that is a S3 plus S4. That is due to the rapid filling due to the rapid passive ventricular filling, we get an S3, and on the top of that we get a superimposed S4 because of the atrial LA systole. We get both S3 and S4. And this is when this is heard with along with S1, S2, called as a quadruple rhythm. And it is the quadruple rhythm gallop often has some duration and can mimic a mid-diastolic rumble. When the heart rate slows down as a result of therapy or carotid sinus pressure, the individual S3 and S4 sounds may be less prominent or even inaudible. When both S3 and S4 are clearly audible, the term quadruple rhythm is used. It can be confusing as a series of audible low frequency vibrations during diastole may simulate a mitral stenosis murmur, and it is commonly found in patients with LV aneurysm, cardiomyopathy, severe LV failure, or dilatation from any cause. The third and fourth heart sounds are low pitched and usually of low intensity, and they occur with low range of human audibility at a frequency range below which most people are accustomed to hearing cardiac sound. The S3 often has some duration of or after vibrations, whereas the S4 is slightly higher pitched and usually is louder. Both sounds may actively to be sought prior to auscultation in order to get detected. They typically sound like a distant third. The sounds may be palpable, particularly the S4. The S3 and S4 often are best heard immediately upon beginning auscultation and may appear to fade away after a short period of time of auscultation. And frequently, gallop sounds are heard only immediately after the patient assumes a new position. There are various helpful maneuvers in auscultation of S3 and S4. Maneuvers that alter venous return are useful during auscultation of low frequency diastolic filling sounds. Anything that increases venous return and intracardiac blood flow accentuates the loudness of S3 and S4. Conversely, a decrease in cardiac filling will attenuate these sounds. Maneuvers that increase venous return include elevation of legs, coughing, mild exercise, abdominal compression, and the release phase of Valsalva. And a right-sided S3 or S4 will be augmented with inspiration. And those maneuvers which lead to decreased venous return, such as in sitting, standing, tourniquets, and the strain phase of Valsalva, we get a decrease in the sounds of S3 and S4. Having the patient assume the upright position is often helpful because both an S3 and an S4 typically attenuate or completely disappear when we make the patient stand. And carotid sinus pressure may be effective in slowing the heart rate when there is a difficulty in timing the gallop rhythm. Hand grip, when used in patients with ischemia, the increased myocardial oxygen demand that follows the hand grip will lead to a sustained or may evoke a left ventricular ischemia and increase the stiffness of the ventricle, thus precipitating a ventricular or an atrial gallop.
Normally, you're not supposed to do isovalmic exercise to elicit S3 like that. Sometimes it may trigger a ventricular arrhythmia, dangerous like that. So don't do, say, no, in a patient, even if he is stable, because when you're clinching the fist, there's a high sympathetic tone rise and there's a sympathetic discharge and it may trigger arrhythmias like that. So to elicit S3 or S4, don't do isometric hand grip. You understand? Only position, relation with respiration, they will help. And the clinical situation.
Yes, sir.
Better not to do or should not do.
Yes, sir. The S3 and S4 are low frequency transient sounds that are best heard and often only heard with the bell of the stethoscope. The lightest possible pressure to make a skin feel should be used, and we should not use a increase in the pressure. As stethoscope pressure is increased to filter out low frequency vibrations, the S3 and S4 will eventually get attenuated. Unless in cases where we have a loud S3 or S4 with a medium or high frequency components may sound more high pitched than usual. A particularly loud S3 or S4 will remain audible even when firm stethoscope pressure is applied. When very prominent, these sounds may also be heard at sites away from the cardiac apex.
That's why the diaphragm of the stethoscope, the center will have a little depression like thing. One is for firm pressure, other is for light pressure. So to appreciate S3, S4, just you apply a light pressure, turning the patient to left lateral position.
Okay.
That will make the S3 or S4 very prominent.
Yes, sir. Location of the S3 and S4. The left ventricular S3 and S4 are maximal at the apex. Occasionally, an S3 or S4 is best heard slightly medial or just superior to the apical impulse. Loud gallops may be audible medial to the apex or even at the lower left sternal border, but are typically softer than at these locations than at the apex. On occasion, gallop sounds, particularly S4, can be heard in the right supraclavicular area, and this location may be helpful in patients with lung diseases or obesity. In patients with emphysema, LV-S3 or S4 may be heard at the subxiphoid area or the lower left sternal border. And differentiation from gallops of RV origin in these patients may be difficult. Right ventricular origin of S3 or S4. Any condition resulting in right ventricular hypertrophy or dilatation may produce a right-sided diastolic heart sound. The cardinal features of S4 and S3 generated in the right ventricular heart are they have their maximum intensity at the left lower sternal border, that is the tricuspid area, and they have an inspiratory augmentation. Usually they will be associated with a right ventricular disease and associated clinical features depicting such as parasternal lift, increased P2, elevated JVP pressure with large A or V waves. How to differentiate LV-S3 from RV-S3? Usually LV-S3 is best heard in the apex, whereas it is best heard in left lower sternal border for RV-S3. Usually it will be best, LV-S3 is best with expiration, RV-S3 is best with inspiration. It is best heard in left lateral position, whereas RV-S3 is best heard in supine and passive with passive leg raising. And LV-S3 increases with isometric hand grip, whereas it has no change with RV-S3. Associated features of left-sided cause of S3 can be seen, and in case of RV-S3, we usually have an elevated JVP. Differential diagnosis of S4 is first one is split S1, S4 S1 complex, S1 early click complex. These are the things that goes in favor of an S4 rather than a split S1 is S4 is the first of the two sounds and it is low pitch and may vary with respiration. The S4 may not, but not the S1 will attenuate or disappear with firm pressure of the stethoscope bell. It becomes softer in upright position. S4 will increase with hand grip following sit-ups or coughing. Maneuvers that increase the intensity of S4 also tend to separate S4 from S1, further enhancing the audibility of S4. The S4 may be heard in the left lateral position. It is usually duller sound than S1, but when S4 is loud, it may become medium to high pitched. Whereas a split S1, splitting of S1 is audible at the apex, but the two components of the S1 are usually best and more discrete at the lower left sternal border, and only a single S1 will be heard at the base. Intensity of tricuspid, sound will varies with respiration, and the intensity of split S1 does not vary when the subject sits or stands, whereas the S4 softens with upright position.
See, normally split S1 is we don't see in our clinical practice except in classically in Epstein anomaly. If you feel that S1 is clearly split, you're able to make out clinically means suspect Epstein. So Epstein is one cause where you can have clear split S1. In other RBB, those situations also it will be very difficult to make out. You don't make out clearly. So that's why split S1 means immediately the diagnosis goes to Epstein.
Split S1 versus S4. Split S1 is always best heard at the apex and the left sternal border, whereas S4 is best heard at the apex. No variation with respiration in case of split S1, whereas there will be variation with respiration for S4. No presystolic accentuation is palpable, whereas presystolic accentuation is palpable with S4. And split S1 is best heard with the diaphragm, whereas S4 is best heard with the bell of the stethoscope. S1 ejection click. Definitely
Hello, Raju. Akila? Him stop అయిపోయింది అక్కడ పోయిందా?
Yes, sir. There is some issue with
Problem
Ashok,
with
sir.
Ashok sir's internet, it seems, sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Ah,
Sorry, sir. Just the power break. I just 2 minutes.
పవర్ పోయిందట.
Don't do something.
చూస్తా ఉన్నా ఎవరెవరు.
Always S4, S1 should be differentiated from S1 ejection click. Both S1 and ejection click are medium to high pitched sounds, and a pulmonic click is loudest at the upper sternal rod and is not audible at the apex. Aortic ejection clicks usually are best heard at the apex, and assuming an upright position does not alter the intensity of the ejection sounds. Palpable S4. Careful palpation of the apical impulse in the left lateral decubitus position is useful for palpating a S4, and detection of an outward presystolic thirst in patients with a palpable S4 is seen. The motion often is quite subtle. Commonly, it feels as if there is a shelf or notch on the upstroke of the apex impulse, called as atrial hump. 2 fingers should be used for detection of a palpable S4, and the finding of palpable S4 indicates that the associated atrial sound is definitely abnormal. Conversely, a palpable S4 occasionally is not accompanied by an audible S4, particularly when the atrial transient is of very low frequency.
Previously, many of the clinicians with history of this one young man, middle-aged man with angina, those things, and by palpation, if you feel an S4, probably suspect hypertrophic cardiomyopathy like that, because there you can, in a patient who is not acutely ill like that, so there the classical one where you can observe is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where you can feel the fourth heart sound by palpation. Once you feel that, then suspect that is it a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy like that. Whereas aortic stenosis is elderly grade people, degenerative arterial disease. There also you feel the S4, but the clinical situation completely different. As soon as you see the patient, so a middle-aged man, 30-40 years man, Comes with that some history search of angina. These are without syncope and some buffer snatch. So pulse, everything you'll see experience like that. But once you feel the precordium, if you feel the fourth heart sound, definitely there is a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
Other diastolic sounds, opening snap. It is a high frequency clicky sound unless the S3 and S4, which is usually seen early in the diastole, and it follows A2 by around 30 to 150 milliseconds, and it usually occurs prior to the S3. And pericardial knock is a early diastolic rapid filling sound in constrictive pericarditis. It also follows A2 by around 100 to 120 milliseconds.
It comes before S3.
Yes, sir. It comes before S3, but usually it is around 100 to 120 seconds when compared to opening snap, which can even occur prior to this time period. Best heard at the left sternal border with the bell of the stethoscope, and it is a high frequency sound when compared to S3, and it is associated with usually other clinical features like elevated JVP with rapid wide descent, Kussmaul sign, and congestive hepatomegaly. And the last one is tumor plop, occurs earlier than S3 and later than opening snap. High frequency sound occurs in a mobile left atrial myxoma associated with features of myxoma and symptoms. And
Now you tell that Ashok, you studied, but now you tell the sequence of events in diastolic. A2, P2, then, no, don't go for that.
okay, sir. A2, P2, then opening snap, then tumor plop, then S3, sir.
Pericardial knock,
Pericardial knock is almost in it's A2, P2, opening snap, pericardial knock, S3, sir.
Tumor plop.
Yes, sir. Tumor.
So I think all of you practice in a diagram, you make a note and then practice, because this, when you ask this question many times, no, even the clinicians who are experienced also suddenly you ask it difficult. So exam, there is no other bonus. So sometimes you know you are finding it difficult to say whether it is a S3 or S4, all those things. Then they say, what are all the diastolic events are there? Why can't you draw a graphic diagram like that? Huh? So
Yes,
just now you have done the seminar, now you should be able to tell clearly.
Sir, A2, P2.
A2, P2. Next,
Next is opening snap, sir.
opening snap. Next,
Then pericardial knock.
tumor plop.
Tumor plop. Then pericardial knock, sir.
Then S3.
Then S3.
Then last is S4.
S4.
And you have to remember like that, okay? See, we may be very difficult to say 120, 140, all those things, sir. It's very difficult, subtle 10 to 1 minute, difficult to remember. Only you can say that this is the thing like that. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Actually, sir, you asked me to just present this, sir.
Actually, this was a NEJM publication was there. I thought it is very good, and for especially exam going like that.
Because this one ECG localization in myocardial infarction is a.
No, they ask that one, or sometimes they ask a short note like Valen sign or De Winter sign like that.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. The first one. Yes, sir.
Brugada, what are the electrocardiogram changes like that short note?
Yes, sir. We have 11 varieties of ECG ischemia in case of acute myocardial infarction or a stable ischemia, which are being depicted in this image completely. The first one is the conventional ST elevation. Mustang, can you please mute everyone?
Trying, sir. I'm trying, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one is the conventional ST elevation MI with elevation of ST at
Most
the J
important
point.
is J point is obturated. That is one.
Yes, sir.
If you see a clear J point elevation and only 1 minute elevation, it is more suggestive of early repolarization. So where is an acute MI, the J point is lost. Okay, that's a classical acute MI. Next,
Next is a De-Winter syndrome.
these are all the changes in the pre-called V1 to V3 like that.
Yes, sir. In De-Winter syndrome, it is taken as a synoquinone for an anterior wall ischemia, wherein which we have a J-point depression and upsloping ST depression in V1 to V6 that continues into tall positive symmetrical T waves and often with 1 to 2 mm ST elevations in AVR lead.
Where, which are you talking?
The second one, sir, De-Winter syndrome.
Huh?
De-Winter syndrome, sir.
The D, you're gone, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The first one is done now, sir.
No, A, B. You
Yes,
should
sir,
have gone like that.
Okay. B, sir.
People will get confused.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. B
After
is
A,
nothing
you
but.
talk about B.
Yes, sir. B is De-Winter syndrome, sir.
Okay.
It is nothing but a J point. It is a synoquinone of anterior ischemia. It is seen with a J point depression and upsloping ST depression in V1 to V6 that continues into tall, positive, symmetrical T waves, often with 1 to 2 mm ST elevations in AVR lead. It is synoquinone for anterior wall ischemia.
Okay.
The T is posterior wall ST elevation MI, where we have an ST depression with greater than 0.005 millivolts with horizontal downsloping and concave upwards in V1 to V3, especially if there is a tall R in V1 by V2 with
So, how
RS
do you
ratio
differentiate
greater than 1.
B and C?
Sir, in C we have an increased RS ratio, sir, greater than
Huh?
1. We have R by ratio in C will be greater than 1, sir.
That's so here also little R will be more.
Yes, sir. And the
More important,
horizontal or downsloping.
no, wide, broad T wave here.
Yes, sir.
Whereas here it is not there.
Yes, sir.
And T wave should be upright in V1, V2 for a posterior wall MI. So
Yes, sir.
T wave is, if there is an inversion, it rules out. So most important is ST depression may or may not be there, but if T wave is upright, associated with an inferior wall MI, suspect posterior wall. Whereas in all the other conditions like RBB, RVH, all those things you have ST depression no doubt, but there is a T wave inversions. So that is the most. So if the T wave is upright in V1, V2, V1 specifically, and is an inferior, my suspect is a posterior wall also is there. Like,
Yes.
okay.
Next one, D is Wellens sign A. It is a biphasic anterior T waves, not always accompanied, and it is not always accompanied by chest pain. It will go in favor of a anterior wall ischemia. And Wellens type B is a deeply inverted anterior T waves and not always, and it usually not associated with chest pain. Both Wellens.
That is no Wellens is more of a subtotal block like that, very critical proximal LAD.
Okay, sir.
It's not a complete block like that. So those patients will have this situation. So you have to pick it up at that stage, do an angiogram, you can do intervention, they do well. The muscle loss is still not there much. Mild loss may be there, but more critically, it's a critical LAD block, proximal LAD block, and with a platelet clot may be there. And it's not a classical transmural changes are coming like that. That is the Wellens. Okay.
Next one, FA6 one is hyperacute T waves. We have a tall, often asymmetrical, broad-based anterior T waves, often associated with reciprocal ST depressions.
That is seen in where? Anterior wall MI only.
Anterior wall MI, sir.
Same, all these things are in anterior wall MI, except that is the posterior wall, C.
Yes, sir. Next, Scarboza criteria. We have Scarboza criteria 1, Scarboza criteria 2, and we have Scarboza criteria 3. It is primarily used to detect the incidence to sensitivity of indicating the ischemia in case of patients with LBB. In criteria 1, if there is an ST elevation of greater than 0.1 millivolts concordant to the QRS in any of the leads, like lead 1, AVL, V4 or V6, we give a score of 5. And in case if there is an ST depression of greater than 0.1 millivolts concordant to the QRS in any of the leads of V1 to V3, we give a score of 3. And in case if there is ST elevation with amplitude greater than 25% of the depth of the preceding S wave with discordant QRS complex, in leads V1 to V3, we give a score of 2. In case if the total added score is more than 3, it is very highly suggestive of myocardial infarction in cases of in patients with left ventricular bronchial block.
So I think that everyone should be thorough with this, and also the other findings of how to make out acute MI in LBB like that. See, these are all Garbo's criteria, but other important is in LBB you have the initial Q septal depolation which occurs causes lead 1, AVL, V5, V6, a Q wave form. Q wave will be there, whereas a positive R wave in V1, V2. So that Q wave will disappear once the LBB is there. So if a Q wave appears back, so that means even if it's a small Q, it should not fit into the criteria of pathological Q waves, then suspect it's a hysteroid, that is an acute antival MI. Other important is disproportionate ST elevation. See, normally also V1, V2, V3 in LBB there's an ST elevation of 1 to 2 millimeter like that. But if you think that is a disproportionate like 5 or 7 millimeters like that, again suspect that it is a LBB with antival MI. The other important is if fortuitously you have an ectopic beat in that electrocardiogram, if the ectopic beat shows a Q wave in the precaudal leads, then it is definite that it's an antival MI with an LBB. So like that, all these criteria, see the 3 Garbo's criteria, but the other 3 or 4 I have told, you should be thorough, like disproportionate ST elevation or a Q in lead 1, AVL, V5, V6, even if it's a small Q, or if it's a ectopic beat is coming and that ectopic beat is having a QR pattern in the anterior right, suspect is an antival MI. Okay.
Yes, sir. Next one is a shark fin. It is actually a deadly ECG sign that we should know. It is a J point transitioning in a convex ST segment where T wave is indistinguishable from the ST segment due to extreme ST deviation. Which is nothing but a combination of it is a combination of giant R wave with a triangular QRS STT waveform. It is a synoquinon with a acute coronary occlusion. It is a deadly ECG actually. It contains usually poor prognosis and it is usually in the early part of the occlusive state.
Okay.
And acute ischemia in case of LVH will have ST elevation greater than 25% of the QRS amplitude and ST elevation in 3 configuration leads or T wave inversion in the anterior leads.
Actually, I read it and it was a very nice one. I think covered in antival, most of the things, LVH, LBB and all those things. So that's why I thought once you review that will be better.
Yes, sir.
LBB, in addition to these 3 Garbo's, you add those whatever I told like that.
Yes, sir.
Q waves and premature complex and disproportionate ST elevation. Or some people also give it as discordant and concordant. Instead of discordant ST changes, but the concordant also indicates ischemia. Normally LBB is there, then ST depression T wave inversion. Instead of that, it is ST no doubt depressed, but it is a upright T wave suspect. There's ischemia.
Yes, sir.
I think somebody is asking acute ischemia and LVH repeat.
Okay, sir. Actually, in case of LVH, the major problem is the amplitude of the Q wave increases. So in such conditions, what is the required ST elevation? that should be taken up for diagnosing acute antival or acute ischemia is described in this diagram. It says that if there is an ST elevation greater than 25% of the QRS amplitude and ST elevation in three contiguous leads and T wave inversions in the anterior leads.
Actually, in LVH, you have a deep S wave, small r deep S wave in V1, V2, V3, and mild ST elevation, 1 or 2 millimeter ST elevation with upright T wave.
Yes, sir.
So sometimes you can mistake it for antival or antiseptal MI like that. So that's why history, again, in ischemic aortic history is very important. But if there's the same thing, that is a disproportionate ST elevation, as in this case, if it's more than 3-4 millimeter like that, definitely should be an MI rather than think that, so not like a pseudo infarct pattern like that.
Yes,
So in LVH, LBB, all of them, you have a pseudo infarct pattern. That should be, see, even LBB, you have a S wave and a ST elevation and T wave upright in V1, V2. So that's why you have to take the consideration to, more important is you have to take the clinical criteria into consideration rather than, sometimes the benefit of doubt should be given to the patient rather than to our diagnosis or clinical skills. You may think that I'm an expert, but we may go wrong. So benefit of doubt should be given to the patient. You observe him, you do enzymes or top, all of them, and then once you're sure, then you can say that you can go home. Otherwise, sometimes they come back with very serious problems like that. And especially nowadays, with this litigation, you should be more careful. Okay. Nicely presented, Raju.
Thank you, sir.
I think you have covered only that last one, you have to add it up.
Yes, sir.
Different diastolic sounds and how to appreciate them. What are the intervals? No, we don't require everything like that. Mainly intervals may be difficult. You can say which comes first, which comes next. And also which is a high frequency, which is a low frequency. That's enough. You don't require to say 0.12, 0.14. It's very difficult to remember. So not necessary. After S2, A2, P2, what will the next come? What is the next one? Next, that's all. And you know that S3, S4 are low frequency sounds, where the pericardial knock, opening snap are high frequency sounds. Tumor plop is in between, that is a medium frequency like that.
Actually, we need to have
mitral stenosis. One more thing is, if you are doing well, some people may ask you, when you get a third heart sound first of all, you said a statement, obstructive will rule out third heart sound, you said, no?
Yes, sir.
So that's true, 99% of the time. But especially from Pittsburgh University, Shaver and our PhD, they did some phonocardic recordings and they said that in mitral stenosis also you can have a third heart sound. Some variation is there in the frequency, like that it's a medium frequency like that they written. But just don't worry about that. But somebody asks you whether a third heart sound is present in MS. Sir, in the routine standard thing is not, but there are descriptions of presence of third heart sound in
associated
mitral stenosis. Understand? That should be the answer. If you say no, also that fellow asks if he is knowledgeable. Why? If you say yes means, how can you expect like that? So both ways you can discuss. So you have to tell, sir, usual thing is third heart sound is not usually present in mitral stenosis, but there are descriptions of third heart sound in mitral stenosis. They have given some hemodynamic explanations, like they did a phonocardic reporting shown that. If you know that, remember, you can say that from Pittsburgh University, Shaver, he is the one who gave that concept. Last time we talked about auscultation shaver, you mentioned, no?
Yes, sir.
Same person, they are the one who gave lot of auscultation. Some questions are there, chart 3 and everything.
No, sir. They're asking to share the presentation, sir. That's it.
Eh?
They're asking to share the presentation, sir.
Okay. You can say that ECG is very good.
Yes, sir.
In the exam, they will ask, they'll give an LBB ECG with MI or without MI. So you may think it's a simple LBB like that. Then the questioning will be whether it may be an acute MI is there or not. Or sometimes how do you make out like that? So a simple LBB can be given as a spotter during Viva, just to know whether you know, because recognizing MI in an LBB is a really important thing in our day-to-day practice. So anyhow, now we have trop T, all those things, but in acute stage, if they're coming 1 or 2 hours, you may not get trop T, may not been raised at all. So you give a benefit out to the patient, admit him, repeat the electrocardiogram, repeat trop T, and then you may find out. And if the pain is classical with risk factors, treat it. The why means sometimes whether you want to take him for a primary angioplasty or whether you want to give a thrombolysis. So that's very important. So, in abroad, they write it in the guidelines says that any new onset of LBB is an acute MI like that. Because they have a record of all the previous visits, everything, and that previous month or 2 months back, he says it was normal, no LBB. Now LBB means definitely with a chest pain, yes, definitely MI like that. But for our patient, we don't have any records either in the hospital or with the patient. Luckily, some patient may say, yes, sir, I had one year back ECG. Okay, 1 year back also ECG also helps. If that showed an LBB, now LB means probably MI is not there. It may be some ischemia or some other things like that. See, we should not miss a transmural or a large infarct. Some non-ST elevation MIs, yes, you may there, but you can observe them and like that. No, so immediately I said it is a very good thing, and that's why I sent to you so that briefly we can discuss this like that. Electrocardiogram in acute antival MI and ischemia.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many attended, sir?
35, sir.
Okay. 17th, 18th, NIMS exam I have to conduct. I am getting tension. Huh?
Why, sir?
No, if they do reasonably well, I will not have a problem. If they are not doing, then I'll be worried to keep them down. But usually they all are from merit, na?
Yes, sir.
Some of the clinics is really tough. Even a bright student might falter. If you see the discussion of this S3, S4, all those things, many times it may be little funny thing may be there, but we don't take it seriously. So in that way, I feel hesitant to fail a candidate. That's why Mumbai people every time ask, sir, call Sampath Kumar. No, really true. Yeah. See, if you have worked sincerely for 3 years, you would have learned something, and you will go on acquiring the knowledge. Especially if you are staying back in an institution for 1 more year, then 100% clearance. Because you are having time to rectify your mistakes, or you will be little more. No, most practical things, if you are thorough, is okay. We don't expect you to high-sounding cardiology, like congenital heart disease, all those things. Okay, if you make a reasonable diagnosis, okay. Some of the DNB students are there?
No idea, sir. I think they were there.
Okay. Okay, Raju.
Okay, sir.
What more? Vijayawada news? Nothing.
Nothing, sir.
No
I was-
chance of reopening, huh? Huh?
No, sir. No, sir. No question of reopening, sir.
Our people are also happy. I think they may be getting Arogyasri money. They're paid or not?
Yes, sir. I think they are very happy, sir, because they are getting so much of money, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. They are happy
Why?
because so much money is coming now, sir. Now 300 patients per patient 35,000.
35
Yes, sir. For Arogyasri patient, it is 30,000, sir.
for 10 days, huh?
Yes, sir. For per day, they are giving 4,000, I think, sir. 3 to 4,000.
Food gig?
Food, everything government supply, sir.
Huh?
Government supply, sir.
In addition to Arogyasri?
Yes, sir. In addition to Arogyasri,
Then
on
there's
the
no
top of that,
expense.
they are giving 2 crores, sir.
No, there is no expenses now because
Yes.
all the residents are all prepaid or free paid. Free service.
Yes.
And we will not have so many beds full and the medical ward 200, 300, where they will be.
Yes, sir. Now they are asking some more 200 or 400 beds, it seems, sir.
No, why?
Because patients are coming every day, 50, 60 patients are coming, sir.
Oh.
They are really in a position, they don't know where to keep the patients also.
Ramesh and all, they have taken hotels and rent and then they are doing it, no?
No idea.
Ramesh
sir.
Cardiac Center, he has taken Swarna Hotel for rent and charging some 80,000 or 70,000 per 5 days center.
Okay,
Food
sir.
is given by the hotel fellow. So he is paid some 30 or 40,000 and remaining 40, 50 is taken by Ramesh.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Murali was telling, and many of the private hospitals are thinking to take hotels and run temporary because they don't have business now. Hotels also closed. So they'll get some maintenance money, all those things.
Yes, sir.
And some MBBS doctor, MD doctor, they'll keep him, that fellow will, and nurses will check pulse, BP like that. Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
If they have some sick, they may shift to some other place like that. Or they shift to government hospital. Or Siddhartha. Okay, Raju.
Okay, sir.
Thank you all.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Next week, what is that?
Sir, exercise stress testing, sir.
Well, last time you talked, na?
Sir, that is a cardiopulmonary exercise testing, sir. The time Bayes theorem and treadmill testing.
I told you first you have to talk exercise physiology like that, then you are completely gone to the different topic.
Okay. I will cover it this week, sir.
Okay. It will take 1 hour, huh?
Yes, sir. Within 1 hour, it will be finished, sir.
The electrocardiogram, huh?
Yes, sir. Based on ECG, sir.
And also others, diabutamine and echo, perfusion, all those things? No.
Sir, if we include all those things, it may take more time, sir. That's why.
Briefly, you tell what is the sensitivity, specificity, which is more specific. See, you can say that exercise treadmill, you need not go into all the details. Everyone knows. Technicians
Okay.
also know how to do it. And what are the specific contraindications,
Sir.
and how to recognize, and what are the pseudo fallacies, or where the treadmill exercise electrocardiogram is not much informative. Clinical situation,
Okay.
you can mention that. And then that is a very undergraduate level like that nowadays for cardiology. But that's very important because still India we do many patient treadmill and a lot of this master health checkup, they do it and they under-report or over-report or misreport, all those things. So minimum should have a concept. Actually, Chang is there, that fellow, he wrote a book on exercise. We used to read it like this one. In the initial phase of a career, that book you have to do, Chang, Victor Chang. He has done a book of 300, 400 pages on only treadmill exercise testing, electrocardiogram. So,
Okay, sir.
but that you correlate with other exercises like dobutamine or dipyridamole, and then our perfusion scan like thallium scan or a technetium scan, and what is the usefulness and what is for sensitivity and specificity. Especially you talk about treadmill electrocardiogram, what are the contraindications and what are the false interpretations. Like if there's a bundle branch block, it's difficult to interpret. If there's a ventricular hypertrophy, again, it's difficult to interpret. All those things are there that you mentioned. Raju?
Okay, sir.
Aslan. So that
Sir.
it will cover. They say if they ask in general like exercise testing, then you have to mention all the things, not just only electrocardiogram. Exercise testing in cardiology. Then also, this is mainly meant for ischemic heart disease, but what are the other non-ischemic areas like to know the effort
Valvular heart disease.
of capacity like valvular heart disease or some other disorders where you want to assess the prognosis of the patient and also to assess the intervention, like some tablets are given, whether useful or not, whether it is improving his exercise performance or not, like after treatment you can also do, and then you know that. So in that way, briefly cover that. And also
Okay,
you need not tell everything like a perfusion scan, what is the thing used, or how it's useful, and how much percentage you have to advise angiogram. See, in abroad, US, everything, they do a perfusion scan. Because they do thallium, but we are not doing in India nowadays thallium because of various other reasons. We do now technetium sestambi. So they without that they don't say, and American they say that even after angiogram, before angiogram you do it, but otherwise even after angiogram they get a perfusion scan done. And now physiological ischemia is more important than anatomical. That's why perfusion scan will give us idea. And sometimes there are tricky situations are there, then perfusion scans will help you to identify whether really some disease is there or not, all those things. You cover like that.
Okay, sir.
Huh?
Okay, sir.
I've given the concept and what are things you can talk. If
Okay.
anything is there, I will add it up with add or subtract or give a essence of it. Okay?
Okay, sir.
The electrophysiology briefly you covered. You can say just mention that cardiac output increases, heart rate increases, stroke volume increases, then peripheral resistance comes down. That's enough. And we measure it by metabolic equivalence. Already you told about
Yes,
that.
sir. Yes, sir.
So then treadmill electrocardiogram. What are the indications, contraindications, and interpretation?
Yes, sir. Bruce protocol, Duke treadmill testing, scoring, all those things.
No, you just say whether Bruce or something like that. You're testing.
Okay, sir.
Mostly commonly used Bruce only. Modified Bruce or you need not connect the leads, all those things like that.
Okay, sir.
Method,
Okay.
treadmill, all those things may not be required.
Okay, sir.
The physiological concept and how to interpret. What are the pitfalls in interpretation? False positive,
Okay.
false negative. Then correlate with the other modalities of stress testing like echocardiogram, stress echocardiogram like dobutamine, or the perfusion imaging like that. And what is the sensitivity, specificity of that?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Finally, see, angiogram will give an anatomical information, physiological information to get from these sources. See, US, they don't do treadmill electrocardiogram. Most of them, they go for perfusion scan, treadmill.
Yes. Okay, sir.
The books write like that. Exercise testing means perfusion imaging, all those things. Or dobutamine.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.